Okay, so table 8, what did you get as your final answer for number 1? 8 and -6, so let's see if that's correct. For this first part of the warm-up, it says in the directions that there should be 2 numbers. If you only found 1, then you probably forgot the plus and minus part. All right, so really know your order of operations. The first part, parentheses / grouping symbols that you would normally do first. Anything under the square root would kind of be like its own grouping symbol. Like you would have to do that first. So what is the square root of 49? And it already had that plus or minus there. Otherwise, no, like when we square root in this class or this unit, you remember the plus and minus. And then 1 plus 7 is 8. 1 minus 7 is -6. Okay. Questions on this? All right. Table 9, what did we get as our final answer for number 2? That's 2 numbers for that one. Number 2. All right, table 9 we'll come back to, but that's the one you guys have. Table 1, number 3, what did you get for the 2 answers? Can you do it now? Yeah. We'll come back to you while you figure it out. Table 2, what about number 4? What did you get for the 2 answers? -2 and -4, you said? Okay. Now, all of these are a bit of practice for parts of the quadratic formula. Number 4 looks most like the quadratic formula, like a certain step that you would simplify it. So it's all about knowing your order of operations. Know that when something is in fraction form, you would have to simplify like the entire numerator, the entire denominator before dividing them together. So that's almost like its own grouping symbol, even though they didn't put it in that. That's like a grouping symbol that you have to work out first. So in my numerator, I have -18 plus or minus. What's the square root of 36? Okay, good. And then I still need to keep simplifying that, but on the denominator with 2 times 3. And here is where it'd probably be a good place to stop and separate it into the 2 separate problems. Because of that plus or minus, we have -18 plus 6 over 6 and -18 minus 6 over 6. So separating it into the 2 separate problems. -18 plus 6 is -12, or did I hear it wrong? -12 over 6, which then becomes -2, so that is correct there. Over here we have -18 minus 6, which is -24 over 6, which does give you -4 over 75. So, and you could use a calculator for all of that. I don't think on Desmos it'll do the plus or minus for you, unless that's something that I don't know it does. But you can do that in your calculator and this in your calculator. Questions? Okay, so table 9, back to you. What did you get for number 2? Okay, again, we can spend all day just waiting for you guys to try something. Table 1, what did you get for number 3? For your 2 numbers. 9 and -3. For number 3?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. This one had it where it was plus or minus. We have to simplify everything under the square root symbol before we can take the square root of it. And I would highly suggest when it comes to quadratic formulas, definitely put everything that's under the square root in your calculator. Highly recommend. But otherwise, order of operations, we do exponents before subtraction or multiplication. So what's the -5 squared? Gotta make sure everyone's listening. You all paying attention? -5 squared is whenever you square something, it should always be positive. Always. So that's why you need to make sure if you're using a calculator, you need to put the parentheses around this number. If you don't, it will be wrong. So -5 squared is a positive 25. Do we subtract first or do we multiply first? According to order of operations. So don't do 25 minus 4 yet. What's -4 times 4? What's -16 times 1? Okay. Now what's 25 minus 16? Okay, so this, I did some scratch work here, becomes plus or minus the square root of 9. What is the square root of 9? And then because of that plus or minus, we should have a positive 3, so change this 9 to a positive 3. And a negative 3. Does that make sense? Not easy about this. Remember the plus or minus part. All right, table 9, number 2, what did we get? Did you get another number as well? 605. Okay. That is correct, except for we can reduce this, and I'm not sure about a negative yet. So let me actually do the work. Just like I mentioned down here for the fractions, you have to work out the numerator and denominator completely before dividing them. They do have parentheses here, but you would have to remember to do that first. And really here, we could break it into 2 separate problems, where it's 8 plus 2 over 5, and 8 minus 2 over 5. So then class 8 plus 2 is 10 divided by 5 is 2. So let's just change that 10 over 5 to a 2. Make it more simplified. And then 8 minus 2 is, which I messed this up, I put the wrong number here. It should be a 5 there. Which 6 over 5, you can leave as a fraction. You could also make it 1.2 since it is a decimal that ends. If it was a decimal that went on forever, like 1/3, I'd tell you to do 1/3 instead of 0.3 repeating. You want more exact answers. Yes. All right, but any questions on the warm-up? All of this can be done in your calculator, except you just might have to, at the plus or minus, break it up into the 2 separate problems and solve them separately. But most of the time, there are 2 solutions for quadratic, so you should expect more of the time. Right, you also have this other part of your warm-up. Also pretty easy, but this is where students make like a lot of the silly mistakes. Like if there's ever any mistakes, it's usually with the plugging in. So table 3, can you tell me what your final answer would be for this number 1? If I plug in a -5 to -80, what does it? It would be a positive 5. So anytime you are plugging in, and that's a part of the quadratic formula, if you remember, anytime you plug into a negative variable, whatever value that you plugged in ends up changing sign. Anytime you plug in, you should use parentheses. This is like having a -1 times a -5, which makes it a positive 5. Table 4, what did you get for this final answer? Did I hear 10? Okay. So we plug in a -5 for the b, we square it. If you accidentally did -5, I don't really know. What's -5 squared? A positive 25. So I can't stress this enough, you need to use parentheses. If you type in just -5 squared, and I'll show you. It really is that important. If you type in just -5 squared without parentheses, it gives you that answer. But we know that when you square something, it should never be negative. That's why it is so important to be positive 25. Okay. Now this over here, number 3, the b squared minus 4ac, that is what's usually under the square root symbol in your quadratic formula. That we call the discriminant. And the value of the discriminant can tell you whether or not your quadratic will have 1, 2, or no solution. Because it's what is determining if it's 1, 2, or 0 solution for the square root of it. Okay, so let's see what we get when we plug it in. Table 5, do you have that final answer for when we plug it in? Okay, so let's see if that's right. So when I plug in, I would do -5 in parentheses squared, -4 times 9 times -2. So this is the first time we're having to plug in the 9 and the -2 for this formula. Now we're going to simplify it. And again, I would put that all in the calculator, but let's do it by hand. What's -5 squared? Positive 25. You multiply before you subtract. So what's -4 times 9? Again, -4 times 9, what is it? What's -36 times -2? That'll be the next thing you multiply by. Did you say 82? Okay, positive 72 is correct. So that is me multiplying here and then here. It becomes 25 less 72, which is definitely not -9. It is actually 97. Our discriminant b squared minus 4ac ends up being 97. If this was the quadratic formula that we were plugging it into, would I have 1 or 2 solutions if I'm having a square root of 97? Yeah, 2 solutions. So anytime that you square root a positive, you should have 2 solutions. I'll abbreviate that. Anytime you square root 0, that's where you just have 1 solution because square root of 0 is just 0, not -0. And then anytime you try to square root a negative, that's where you get the no solution, because that's impossible. Just a good to know. Sometimes you are tested on really easy to be able to use the quadratic formula. But anyway, table 6. For number 4, what did you get as a final answer? 8 and 2? Okay, so let's see. Plugging in a -5 for the b, less or minus the square root of a, which is 9, and simplifying. Class, what happens with this double negative? So +5 plus or minus, what's the square root of 9? So yeah, it would be 8 and 2, because 5 plus 3 is 8, 5 minus 3 is 2. So good job. Any questions? If any of that math was difficult, you can use your calculator. Just remember, if there's a plus or minus, that you do plus and the minus. Questions? Yes. So we are doing the last lesson of the school year, very last one. We are doing lesson 17. And it is about using the quadratic formula to solve problems, just in general, and also like real world problems. That is what you will be tested on. And you use it correctly, and you use it to solve problems. The practice will be a puzzle piece. It's lesson 17, so just make sure you go do that. Pretty soon I'll have all the study guides published. I have the practice one ready, like I have a copy if you want it before the weekend starts, but I plan to have all the study guides available by Monday. And next week is testing week, our last unit test. So just like always, the day before testing, you have your binder check, you have a day to ask me questions about the study guide. Thursday, you are taking the test. Friday, you're doing corrections in groups to make your cheat sheet for when you retake it on Tuesday. And then that's pretty much it. Then we'll just have like finals and review the finals. Okay, the last lesson. It's the last lesson. The rest of the year is just review and testing. So you can make big strides in your grade, but we do have Saturday Academy tomorrow and next week and Tuesday tutoring. We're there, so use everything that's available to you. Make sure your grade is what you want it to be. Questions on that? When she's done. Okay, so moving on. This you should have learned yesterday by watching that video. The video is the shortest video lesson I've ever had to lead. Because honestly, it is really straightforward. This is the quadratic formula. The A, B, and C come from your standard form set equal to 0. I did leave space on your paper for you to write the formula. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So if it's not set equal to 0, you need to rearrange it. And then identify your A, B, and C. It does say A can't be 0 because if it is, then it's not a quadratic. So you can't use a quadratic formula. It's not a quadratic. Those of you that did watch the video yesterday, am I making you memorize this formula? I am not making you memorize the formula. This is the only formula that I am providing you on your unit test. So things like vertex form, you have to know what that is. Things like this part of it, I won't give you that part of it. I will only give you what I boxed up. We'll use it all through high school, whenever it comes up. If you go to college, they make you memorize it in college, so that's the only one I'm providing you at this level. So, good question for final exams. The constructed response, you get nothing part. For the multiple choice part, like the very last day, you can have like a little note card type of cheat sheet. All right, but yeah, any questions? So that's quadratic formula. I'm not making you memorize it, you just have to know how to use it. So we're gonna practice using it. I wasn't here to teach it to you yesterday. Again, we had a video, which is me, and a practice. And you had to upload those for points. If you haven't done that, then make sure you do it. I mean, homework doesn't like impact your grade that much, but I know as soon as I put those missing, then people are gonna complain. Because if you want the points, then you upload it. Anyway, let's walk you through one and then you can try the next two. So we're gonna solve this using quadratic formula. Is this in the correct form for me to be able to solve it using quadratic formula? Is it in standard form set equal to 0? So then, yes, I can just go ahead and start identifying my A, B, and C so that I can plug it in. Let's see, I can't remember what table I want that on. Table 5, what's gonna be my A? So A is always what's in front of the x squared. What's in front if it's not written. So A is 1. A, B, and C should always be numbers, never x's. So yes, A is always in front of the x squared. Table 6, what's my B? Table 7, what's my C? So if it's already in standard form set equal to 0, then first I would not skip this step. Even I would identify my A, B, and C first. If it's negative, make sure you show that it's negative. Normally you don't write the +1 or +4, but if it's negative, make sure you show that. And this has it where it already has the parentheses for you. So all you're doing is plugging it in according to your formula. Here's that formula, if you didn't write it down. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2m. So then what needs to go here where my mouse is? Which we said was, okay, good. Table 8, what needs to go here where my mouse is? 4. Table 9, what needs to go here where my mouse is? 1. Good. Table 1, what needs to go here? Good. And table 2, what needs to go here? Okay, good. Any questions? So then you plug it in. I would not try to combine anything in this step. Like I know you can probably do 2 times 1 in your head, but I would just plug it in like this first. Then I'd start simplifying. You could try to type it all in your calculator if you know how, but I like to really see what's under the square root symbol in case it's like irrational and I have to simplify it, or it's negative and it's no solution. So I'll simplify like these parts of it on my own. And 1's 2. What's under the square root, I highly recommend just let the calculator do that part. W. I let the calculator do the 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 5. So I have a positive 36 under the square root symbol. That tells me that I'll have 2 solutions at the end of it. Because it's positive. And then if you don't know how to do square root, or if it's a perfect square, then in a different cell, do square root, whatever that number was. So my square root of 36 is 6. -4 plus or minus 6 over 2. When it looks like this is where I break it up into the two separate problems. One where it's -4 plus 6 over 2, and one where it's -4 minus 6 over 2. So it's -4 plus 6. Table 1, can you tell me that? -4 plus 6 is class 2 divided by 2 is, so one of my answers is 1. Table 2, what's -4 minus 6? And then class -10 divided by 2 is -5. Here's my conclusion. Good, any questions, comments, concerns? I'm gonna have you guys on your own for a few minutes, try number 2 and number 3 on the back. And then we'll skip number 4 just because of time purposes. I mean, you can try that one too if you want. But I want you to try number 2 and number 3. I'll leave this up as an example, and I'll even scroll a bit so you can see the formula of it. All right. And the screen, and also the root might be called on for certain parts. Just pay attention to what part I want. Table 3. Well, first tell me, is this in the correct form to be able to solve by quadratic formula? Do I need to do something to that first? Okay, it is correct. It's in standard form, set equal to 0. I can just go ahead and start identifying my A, B, and C. So table 3, what's gonna be my A? Good. Table 4, what's gonna be my B? And table 5, what's gonna be my C? Good. All of them happen to be positive, but if anywhere negative, make sure you show that and plug it in accordingly. Plugged in, it would be -b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So plugging in those numbers we just identified for a. All right, now simplify. This just becomes a -7 plus or minus square root of, like I said, I would put that part in the calculator. Highly recommend, a lot easier. And it prevents like silly calculation mistakes. Let's see, 7 squared minus 4 times 1 times 12. And always use parentheses anytime you plug stuff in. I get a +1 under the square root symbol. All over 2 times 1, which is 2. Okay, so any questions there? Then we have to work out what the square root of 1 is. What is it? 1. And that plus or minus symbol is already in the formula, so that's nice, so you don't forget it. Most of the time, there's 2 answers. Because I took the square root of a positive, I should have 2 answers at the end. So, -7, let me actually break it up. I feel like that's easier for you guys. What is -7 plus 1? What's -6 divided by 2? So one of my answers for this one is -3. Class, what's -7 minus 1? not -6, -8. -8 divided by 2 is, so those are your two answers. Doesn't matter the order you write them, but you gotta have a -3 and a -2. Good? All right, now the backside remove the crutch of having to do this fill in the blank, so hopefully you can still do that without that part. Table 5. Is this in the correct form that I'm able to use quadratic formula? What needs to change about it?
No, that's right.
Okay, it is right, because it is in standard form. Set equal to 0. If it wasn't, maybe like if it was equal to C, like a constant, then I'd have to cancel it out and do the same on the other side, and then identify my A. So it is in the right form. I can just identify my A, B, and C. Table 6, someone other than Lauren, what's my A?
Right.
Table 7, what's my B? And table 8, someone other than Kadisha, what's my C? Good. Alright, make sure that 6 is negative, it does make a difference. I'm gonna write my formula over here again, in case for some reason you still don't have it on your papers. But it's -b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Anywhere that you're plugging in a number, you have to use parentheses. So I have -6 plus or minus the square root of -6 squared minus 4 times 9 times 1. All of this for root symbol. All of this over 2 times A. I know some of this you could probably simplify like as we go. I wouldn't recommend that. And then you probably do 2 times 9 and was right 18. I would just plug it all in first, double check that you plugged in things the right way, then start simplifying. So any questions on that stuff? Okay, also, where did this 4 and this 2 come from? Four and the 2, where did it come from? Not my A, B, or C. Okay, good, it's just in the formula. Right here and here, there's a couple numbers in there. The rest of it depends on what your quadratic is for A, B. All right, but anyway, start simplifying. Table 9, what happens with the -6? What's a -1 times -6? Okay, good. So the double negative makes it positive. Under the square root symbol, I would put that in my calculator. Table 1, do you know what that's gonna be? Like, what is for number 3, like what's under the square root symbol? Can you do it real quick? I'm gonna do it too, but I'm gonna stop before I put my last. And that is correct. So I would highly recommend you plug it in just like this with the parentheses and everything. Look what happens if I don't put parentheses around the -6. And give me the wrong answer. It should equal 0 if you plug it in the right way. But that, it should be 0 under the square root symbol. And what is the square root of 0? 0. So I should expect how many solutions from this one? Just one, because there's no plus or minus 0. It's 0. And then the 2 times 9 is 18. Any questions up to now? So you could try splitting it into 2 separate problems if you want, but 6 plus 0 is the same as 6 minus 0. In either situation, you get 6 over 18, which simplifies to what? One-third is what it simplifies to, and that's your one solution. I prefer you use the 1/3 over the 0.3 you're leaving, since you have to round that. But 1/3 is that. Good, any questions? So that's it. We'll add you to the line. Who was after 1/3? So you'll be after right. All right, one more thing before we move on. I do just want to point out something. Let me erase this so that I can highlight something else about this formula. This part of your quadratic formula should be familiar to you. The negative b over 2a. What's that from? Line of symmetry, good. That is something that I am not providing you. I'm not providing you the line of symmetry formula, but I am providing you the quadratic formula. So if you need like a reminder, you can remember that this part of it is your line of symmetry formula. All right, but anyway, the last thing we need to cover that will be on your test is you applying the quadratic formula to a real world situation. You'll have it on your constructed response, where you show your work and stuff, and then also just on your related test. So we're going to skip to the part about the potato. On the side. No. So we're gonna set up an equation and solve it using quadratic formula. We have this equation that represents the height in feet of a potato t seconds after it's been launched. First, we're gonna write an equation that can be solved to find when the potato hits the ground. And then solve the equation. So we've done this before, just with other ways. You're not going to do this with graphing. So you can always check your answer with graphing on your test, but no graphing right now. If I'm trying to figure out the time when the potato hits the ground, what do I need to plug into this formula? So think about that, don't tell me yet. It's a quadratic, so it's a U shape. The A is negative, so I know it opens downward. One of my projectile motion problems. We're comparing height and time. Time usually goes on what axis? So that means my y-axis is the height. Where, like on the graph, is the height 0? You have to tell me like a number. It's like where on the graph where the height is 0? What part of the graph is that called? At your x-intercepts. Usually we have 2, but if we want to know when the potato will hit the ground, we're probably more looking at this one than the first one. And what is the height at the ground level? So I'm going to plug in for the height 0. we're solving for the time. So don't plug it in for the time, because that would make sense. Plug it in for the height, which is that whole part right there. So 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 80t plus 64. That's step 1, is knowing how to set it up. If I'm solving for when it hits the ground, my height needs to be 0. Can I use quadratic formula to solve this? Is it in the right form? It is. It is in standard form set equal to 0. I mean, the 0 is on the other side, but you should still be able to identify a is always in front of the x squared. B is always in front of the x. C is always in front of, or just the constant. So using your A, B, and C, plug it into your quadratic formula and solve. If you finish early, do part B, where we're solving for when the potato is 40 feet off the ground. Just like your constructed as well. I'll give you 3 minutes. On the screen, you can see what it looks like plugged in. I highly recommend, don't try to skip anything in that step. I would just write it down, make sure I plugged everything in the right spot. And always use parentheses when you plug things in. In the first few, I showed you, like, I like to simplify it to where I can see what's under the square root symbol. So I would do this stuff separately. 2 times negative 16 is negative 32. I'd use the calculator to solve what's under the square root, because sometimes, like, you have to simplify it if it's irrational, things like that. So here's what I put initially, and that's a big number. It's not a perfect square. As you can see, I did square root that number. It's a long decimal. And to avoid having to do like negative 80 plus 102.44, blah, 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 divided by negative 32, I then went in and typed in the whole thing. It's my whole quadratic formula. When I do that, obviously I can't put like the plus or minus right now, or maybe I can and I just don't usually do it, but I put the plus first. Would this answer make sense for time? To be negative 0.7 seconds when it hits the ground. So usually, because there's 2 solutions, we only want the one where it's like it hits the ground after the launch. So to get my other one, I'm going to change this plus to now minus, because that's where the plus and minus goes. And now, does this answer make sense? About 5.7 seconds after it was launched, it hit the ground. That'd probably be like a typical time for the potato situation. So yeah, the final answer ends up being about 5.7 seconds. That's what we think means approximately. Don't think we have time to cover part B. However, it does say for when it's 40 feet off the ground, is that height or time? 40 feet. So just like we did earlier, we plug it in for the height in the original problem. But this time, you have to set it equal to 0. How do I make that 40 0? There we go, one side. Then you get something that looks like this. And then you solve your quadratic formula once you simplify after subtracting 40. And then plug it in. Any questions?